Mr. Brody, what were the circumstances surrounding your hearing of the president's death, and what was your reaction?
Well, I was presiding over the California Water Commission meeting in Southern California when someone brought me word that the president and Governor Connolly had been shot. My immediate reaction was one of immobility. I was speechless for a time, and I was told afterwards that people in the audience knew that something serious had taken place because of the expression on my own face. Then I interrupted the proceedings and announced to the gathering that the president had been shot. And I noted the expressions, I can recall the expressions on the faces of the people in the audience at that time, one of tremendous shock. And later when I announced that the president had died, that was one of great grief. And I was impressed at the time, too, and now in reflection, that I recall seeing people in the audience who were the opposite political party from him, and men who I knew had attacked him in the past, but yet the grief that shone on their faces was just as great as that of any other person there.
You had had opportunities to meet with the president on many occasions. What were your reflections on him as an individual man?
Well, as a man, I was impressed, as I was, by seeing him on television as well as in my personal contacts with him. He's a man of great compassion, a man of great human kindness, and above all, a man who respected human dignity. And in all of this, you found a great sense of humor, which accompanies all these other elements. And this is an unusual quality to find in a man who was born to wealth, as he was. And but yet, this had not altered the course of his life in directing it to benefiting man and man in general. This is the most impressive thing about him. And his humanity, I guess, is what you would call it. He was a real man and a real human being. I remember at the San Luis groundbreaking, the president arrived. The crowd had waited out there a long time in the hot sun. We had provided a large trailer for him, an air-conditioned trailer, so that he might rest before he came on the platform, and that he might wait until it came his turn to speak. His aides wanted him to go into the trailer where it was cool, but I recall him stating that those people out in front had waited in the sun for a long time, in all the hot sun, and that was where he was going to stay. And when everyone else got on the platform, he was going to get on the platform too and await his turn. Another instant which you may recall, we flew back to Fresno to the air terminal where he greeted a crowd again. And there was a little boy in an Indian costume who wanted to invite the president to a convention of the Indian guides here in town. The little boy came up on the platform, and the microphone was too high for him. And I remember the president starting to lift him up, and the president took the boy by one shoulder and I by the other, and we lifted him up so he could speak. But at the same time, the little boy became speechless, mic fright, I guess. And the president kept urging him to speak and trying to get the boy to speak, but he couldn't. And we finally let the little boy down, and he turned around and started to walk away. And the president said, "Are you sure there isn't something more you want to say, son?" And just trying to help the boy all they could. And here was a man I'm certain was fatigued after the big day and big week, traveling and speaking in many places, but here he was thinking about this little boy. And I think this again is a measure of him.
I think one thing that when the president had left the nation's capital, such as in coming to San Luis, he went right to the people. Did he ever voice any reason why he went right into the middle of people, right into the middle of a group?
No, I believe, though, as I would analyze it, I think that he loved people, and he loved people as much as they loved him. I recall that the Secret Service people were very much distressed after he left the platform at San Luis when he broke away from them and went over to the crowd. I recall on the way from the platform back to the helicopter, the crowd pressed in on him, but he enjoyed this. He loved people, and it was a true love for them. It wasn't something that was just for his political advantage. He liked to be around people. He loved them, and I believe that the one thing perhaps he didn't like about the presidency was the cloistered atmosphere, the inability to really get out among people as much as he would like to. I think this is accounted for in everything he attempted to do, particularly in the civil rights field, his love for people themselves.
You knew him also as a senator before he became the president. Was there much of a change in the man from that time until the last time you knew him?
I think there was a change, but I think, of course, he was a young man as president. He was even younger, of course, when he was senator. And I think there was a maturing in between those periods of time, in that period of time. But I think the same qualities existed then. But as we grow older and these qualities mature with you and develop with you, but I think that basically he had the same compassion at that point that he had the day he died.
Was he different in Washington than he was when he was out touring the country? Was there any apparent change in him?
No, I recall in one of the few times I met him in his office that while you could detect the strain of office on him and the many things with which he was preoccupied, that he still had that same quality about him. I was always impressed by the fact that he knew people by their names that he had seen before, their first name too. I remember at the time the signing of the San Luis contract itself, and he had this kind of thoughtfulness. He signed his name and he turned around and he said, "Here, Ralph." Now I was standing in a large crowd of people, and he had no reason to remember my name. He had no reason to think about giving me that pen, but he turned around and handed it to me just the same and called me by name. Well, this makes you feel good too.
How do you believe, Mr. Brody, that Mr. Kennedy will rank in the past great presidents that we have had?
I think that partly because of what he did and partly because of what he could have done, he will rank among the truly great presidents of our time. Of course, he was in office for a relatively short period of time, but I think he made tremendous progress during the time that he was in office. And the goals that he set, even though many of them were not achieved, will be ones which I'm certain we're not going to be able to discard in good conscience. And with this in mind, I think that merely the setting of some of the goals and having the courage to start to achieve them is going to mark him as one of the great presidents we have had, or, in my judgment, perhaps ever will have. When we speak of these goals, I know that all of us are stunned and shocked and grieved by this thing. But when I think of his goals, and I think of him and this terrible thing that has happened, that in my judgment, the sincerity of our grief and the true quality of it is going to be measured not by what we feel today, and not by what we do and say today, but by what we do sincerely and actively and not passively and being apathetic about it, in trying to pursue and accomplish the things that he set out and tried to do. Field of civil rights and the fields of our international relationships. If we're truly grievous about this terrible thing that has happened about our loss and his family's loss, then we must do these things, and I think that we will.
Well, in the continuity of running the country, President Lyndon Johnson now has the full responsibility. You are also familiar with the man that he is and the way that he thinks. How do you think he is going to pick up the torch and carry on?
I think that President Johnson is able to carry on and highly qualified to carry on. I think that he thinks along the same lines as President Kennedy, and I think he will carry on that torch to the fullest extent of his ability, which I think is extremely great.
Do you think we'll see any change in some of our domestic problems, economy, continuing the conservation program, and things of this sort?
No, not any other changes than what would have occurred if President Kennedy had continued in office. I think that the two men think alike. I think this was demonstrated by the programs and the assistance in which President Johnson, then Vice President, participated and supported. And I think that the programs will continue, essentially as they have and were started in the past, if he gets the support of the people of this country. And I'm sure he will. He should.